in England, of all places, right? So I just wanted to also take a moment and just recognize what an amazing moment for the Ummah, what we are seeing in Bangladesh. The fact that the Ummah needed this boost, this win, and we saw a tyrant fleeing the country, and we are seeing, mashallah, takbirat in the student movement, just such an amazing opportunity to see how a non-violent movement can overthrow a tyrant, subhanallah. So we really needed to see that win, and our prayers are with the people of Bangladesh. So Malcolm X, rahimullah, said media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power. How many of you heard the story of the beheaded babies? Babies beheaded. Israel exposes brutish Hamas. 40 babies murdered by Hamas. These are all the headlines that were bombarding us. Beheaded babies, beheaded babies, beheaded babies, beheaded babies, beheaded babies. And that is why you can understand why Malcolm X Shaheed was right. I want to specify, when we looked into this case of the 40 beheaded babies, we wondered, how did this story reach globally? And this is where you will see the nexus of oppression, that the Israeli regime and the Indian regime working together, that the Bharatiya Janata Party was behind their WhatsApp factory of spreading false news and fake news around the world, helped the Israeli regime spread the story of the beheaded babies. Mainstream news is still the primary way people consume news across generations. Justice for All monitored 2,700 TV stations for 5 days between November 21st and December 1st on 2023. This is what we found. Israel and hostage was mentioned 302,000 times. Palestine was mentioned only 9,428 times. What was the message? Ignore Palestinian lives. This is graphically, I mean, sometimes we hear about it, but when you see the numbers and you see the data, it really, really hits you. These are some of the verbiage that was being used, and the hypocrisy and the difference in how the wording that are being used. These are some of the headlines. In the same newspapers, Hamas, blah, 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 roasted babies alive in ovens during massacre. Medic reveal a scale of terrorist depravity laid bare. On the other hand, when Palestinian children are killed, at least such as, I'd love for you to pipe in and tell me what differences you see between these two headlines. At least 68 Palestinians, including 7 children, are killed in Gaza refugee camp in one of the deadliest Israeli airstrikes since the war began, as 15 IDF soldiers died.
The graphic adjectives that used to show how brutal and how horrible the suffering for the Israelis is, and how just non-committal and just safe to say that we said it for the Palestinians.
Exactly, and this is one of the better headlines because it actually blames the Israeli airstrikes. I'll show you more where it's just like Gazans died. Like, who killed them? What happened? They just passed away, right? These headlines, like, unbelievable. Airstrike on Gaza school kills at least 15 people. Like, where did that airstrike come from? Can we know that? 5 killed and look at the difference between the coverage of Kiev and the coverage of Gaza, right? 5 killed in Russian strike in central Ukraine. So the perpetrator is clearly marked in this coverage in the BBC, whereas when it comes to Gaza, it's not. In the same way, Middle East crisis, at least, like just the wording that are being used by these editors. Now, why is it so? So, and this is a report that was done by the Muslim Council of Britain on how this is being used, what is happening here. And they dug it down and they looked at 5 points of how this was being spread. Language utilization, framing of the events, which perspective, who was being listened to, who was being interviewed, right? Contextual framing and misrepresentation and undermining. And this is absolutely important. I'm going to go into this more in detail, but I just want to let you know that we do these trainings on a weekly basis every Monday night at 9 p.m. EST. And so I'm going to share later and how you can join our Media Watch team. And why is this happening? So how many of you have heard the word Hezbollah, right? So what is Hezbollah and understanding Hezbollah? Hezbollah is a Hebrew term for public relations or, quote, explanation. And it's aimed at promoting Israel's image abroad. It aims to influence international media and public opinion by framing narratives in a way favorable to Israel. Nothing wrong in that, supposedly, right? From a government's perspective. But then what techniques do they use? Their techniques, number one, is messaging. And you will find this in every newspaper. You will find this. These are repetition of Israeli talking points. You will see this in the coverage on CNN, on ABC News, on CBC in Canada. Israel's right to self-defense. That is like the number one point that's hammered in. Portraying Israel as a democracy and then framing Palestinians as aggressors. And you will see this in the coverage. Bittersweet reunion for young kidnapping victim, and you'll see the humanization and the look at very carefully at the visuals that are used, right? You see the flag in the back and the loving embrace. Again, look at the humanization of the hostages. Again, CNN, again, and again. Until we absorb these words, this terminology, that is Hezbollah, where there are terrorists versus freedom fighters, security versus occupation. Look at these two headlines. As Israel steps up attacks, 3,000 Gazans are on the move. Such a sanitary headline, right? Isolated and defiant, Israel vows to stand alone in war on Hamas. No mention of genocide, no mention of attacks, no mention of atrocities, no mention of massacres, no mention of... And it's just like, it just sort of happened, right? And Gazans are just moving because they have to, right? And this is why. Oops. So what are we doing about it? And why does this matter? This is something that I am missing out on some of my slides. Okay, hopefully this will come back on. Okay, never mind. So what are we doing about it? So Justice for All and our sister organization, Sound Vision, decided that we need to do media right, because this Hezbollah is working on a daily basis, breaking down and controlling the minds of the public. So how do we counter these Hezbollah narratives? And why should we? Well, we know there are hundreds of journalists that are good people. They want to share the truth. They want to tell the truth, but they have either Zionist editors or their policies, because of the marketing, because of the ads, have been so ingrained in their news coverage. Look at this. Hundreds of journalists sign a letter protesting coverage of Israel. What we are hearing from inside newsrooms across the country is they need to hear from us. They hear from Zionists on a daily basis. But how many of us are thanking them for good coverage and calling them out on their BS bad coverage? And that is why Palestine Media Watch was formed. This is breaking the frame. The Muslim community requires a sophisticated media strategy to reduce Islamophobia in media, to support the struggle for freedom, justice, and Islam, and to project a positive image of Muslims. And to do this, this is what we're doing. Our team monitors 2,700 TV channels, 100,000 newspapers, and over 10 million social media posts. We have retained the services of public relations firm in Canada, and we're in the process of doing that here in the United States, and to apply pressure on unfair media. And this is what we call Palestine Media Watch. One of the things that we do is focus on terminology. So when editors do the kind of, you saw the headlines, what do? We go in and we say, when they say IDF, we use the word Israeli military, because Israeli Defense Forces sounds, again, the Israeli talking point that they're self-defense, right? So you go in and you write to the editor of your local paper to say, hey, call them what they are. This is the Israeli military, just like we would call it the American military or the Burmese military. We don't call the Burmese military Tatmadaw every time we publish it on the newspaper, right? In the same way, the use of the word conflict, call them out. ICJ has called this a genocide, right? Use the word genocide. Often at times we use, as activists or as scholars, we use terminology that is extremely, it works in activist spaces, but it doesn't work in mainstream media. Anti-Zionist, pro-Palestine. This makes it sound like there are two teams, Jews and Muslims. No, there are no two teams. This is the side of either you support Palestinian freedom or you don't support Palestinian freedom. This is not, when you use the word anti-Zionist or pro-Palestine, you fall into the traps of Hasbara. So with the collaboration with Tech for Palestine, we have, we've created, Justice for All has created Palestine Media Guide that is 100 pages of exactly what I've been talking about, but much, much on detail. And working with Tech for Palestine, we have trained AI. So what I want you guys to do is take out your phones and go to wordsofjustice.org. And when you get there, let me know if you're, get on the campaigns. There's a tab on there called campaigns. Everybody there? So go on to any of the ones that say New York Times or CNN or The Hill. Go in there. You can either thank or spank, right? Media. And this is for people, in the beginning, we were sending out action alerts, urging people to write their own responses. And we found that a lot of our community is very reluctant, or they don't have confidence in their writing skills. So we have trained AI using our Palestine Media Guide and talking points. Every day we sit down and analyze hundreds of newspaper articles, take out talking points, what's wrong with them, and then we make these campaigns. Put in your email address, choose a tone. You can be angry, you can be academic, you can be pithy, just sarcastic. Pithy is sort of like the Gen Zs like to choose pithy a lot. And it will generate an intelligent response to that article using some of the talking points that we have analyzed it for. And you can send with one click to not only the editor, the reporter, but many of their staff. So what we do is we make it so it's easy for you to send it to their editorial team, to the broadcast channel folks. Like a lot of their emails would be on there. So we make it super, super easy. And we've had awesome wins. For example, we had 600 local Los Angeles Times readers write to the Los Angeles Times in the very, very beginning. And we had them consistently bombard them and ask them to call for a ceasefire, ask them, call them out on their coverage. And Los Angeles Times is one of the only newspapers in this country so far who has an editorial calling for a ceasefire. So I'd like to give us takbir. Working with other activists, other organizers, we had the Washington Post cartoon removed. There was a cartoon where they were showing Ismail Haniyeh, strapped with a child and a Palestinian woman. It was a racist cartoon. So doing this and sending thousands of emails, thousands of tweets to Washington Post, we had that cartoon removed. We've seen terminology change in newspapers. In the Montreal, I can't remember, it's the Times or Montreal Gazette, they were consistently using the word Hamas-controlled Gaza health ministry. And so our campaign was like, we don't call Trump-controlled or Republican-controlled National Health Ministry or, National Institute of Health when COVID was happening, right? We don't say that for any other country in the world. Why is there a different standard for Palestine? So that terminology changed. We kept on consistently pushing for it. And alhamdulillah, now we've gotten to the point where reporters are reaching out to us and saying, we say, you have no perspective from anybody from Gaza. Like, what is going on? Why is the only perspectives coming in from Israel? And they'll say, oh, we don't have connections. So now we have a group where we're sharing information with folks on the ground and connecting reporters to people on the ground. Alhamdulillah. So if you guys could take a screenshot, is that up? Yeah. Of this QR code, this will lead you right into our WhatsApp group. And every day we have campaigns. We're working in Canada, we're working in the US, and we are pushing back at this media narratives because we believe media is complicit in this genocide. Everybody got that? We're also doing media right. Just take a look.
Sonar Bangla is rising again. Yes, Bangladesh is rising. Rising for justice and democracy. And it's rising bravely. He is Abu Saeed of a university in Rangpur, Bangladesh. This English major student was gunned down by police on July 16th at close range and in public view as he stood alone with a stick in hand. This iconic image, like that of Tiananmen Square, where a student stood up against tanks, inspired even more students. Hassana Wazid, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, however, resigned and fled to India. Yes, to India. She has been a close ally of India. Known more as a dictator, she has been Prime Minister 4 times. She, quote unquote, won 2 elections in which opposition was not free to participate. She had the leaders of the main Islamic opposition, Jamaat-e-Islami, hanged on accusations of supporting Pakistan 45 years after Bangladesh came into being. Even during this popular student uprising, she called the student movement Rajaka. Rajaka literally means volunteer in Bangla language. It is, however, used as a slur, reserved for the supporters of Pakistan during the independence of Bangladesh. The government also banned Jamaat Islami of Bangladesh and its student group, Chatra Shibir, blaming them for the students' uprising. But that blame did not work this time. Students themselves started chanting to be Rajakar. The slogan translates, "Who are you? Who am I? Rajakar, Rajakar. Volunteers, volunteers." The movement caused her to flee back to India. The army chief of Bangladesh, General Waqar-uz-Zaman, told the nation an interim government will be formed to run the country. It was an army coup which killed her father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, in 1975. Questions remain, however. Will it be yet another cycle of military control? Will Hasina once again come back from India to rule the country? Will Bangladesh move forward toward freedom, justice, and democracy?
I'm gonna skip over this one. Let's look at this one. What's up with that? They don't stop at anyways to censor us, do they? Okay. Sorry about that. I'm just going to push it back. What I'm going to ask you to do is follow us on, if you got, we have an app, and to subscribe. Sorry. Yeah, that is true. Okay, so take out your phones, inshallah, once more, and go ahead and subscribe on YouTube. You point your camera and scan, click on the link, and the subscription will come up, and you can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on Apple TV, Roku, and what we are trying to do is to do media right. Cover Palestine the way it should be covered, without the lenses of Hasbara on us 24/7. If you're interested in internships, if you're interested in writing, if you're interested in reporting, this is your American Muslim news channel. And we're urging all of you to be a part of it. And the reason why we're doing this, and hopefully now I can show this to you, if I could just have 1 second, because I couldn't get to it in the beginning. Yeah, this is why.
You want us to make you look good? That's not my job. Your job is to make us look good. Our job is not to make you look good, American Jews. What do you have to worry about? Your job is to make us look good. And here's how you do it. Every one of us has to serve 3 years in the army, 2 years in the army, some of us 5 years, and then for the rest of our lives, you have got to serve 2 or 3 years in the army of words. You've got to learn to fight the political battle, which is even more important at this point than the military battle that we are. We'll fight the military battle. We're not asking you necessarily to come and be lone soldiers, although some of you can. You've got to learn how to fight back on the campuses, how to make the arguments. Now they keep shifting. You know, the ground keeps shifting under us. They keep changing the language. Intersectionality wasn't even a word 10 years ago. Now suddenly it's intersectionality. You've got to stay on top of it. And you know how we train for the army? We don't train for defensive warfare. If the war against Israel ever had to be fought on Israeli soil, do I have to tell you? It's an impossibility. So it's the same thing. Don't let the war of words ever be fought about Israel's nature. Let it be fought about why you can't accept Israel, why you have to single out this tiny people. Try to find Israel on the map. It's hardly there. You know, we used to play this game, Where's Waldo? Where is Waldo on the map? Are you going to really tell me that this is the country you want to blame? Push them, teach them how to defend by attacking. Teach them really what one says as in fencing. You've got to do that. You've got to make demands on them. They've got to serve for 3 years in the army of words.
We are.
Well,
They are serving on the army of words. And that's what we are asking you to do. We have our own army of words, and we're asking you to join us and serve on this army. And let's knock down and stop this genocide in Chile.
We have a sign-up sheet in the back. Anyone would like to be part of it, please sign up.
Actually, you want to be part of it because this is the way we fight that.